Hello and welcome to the Becoming Show. Today is episode number 8, and the topic is on money. It's interesting. I was looking at the notes that I was teaching this class back in 2020. It's called Money Mastery Formula. And I went through each of the steps, and honestly, I could not change anything because these are the foundation, the concepts that doesn't change. Even though technology, even though things has changed so much in the last 5 years with AI being the prominent opportunity right now. However, the foundation of wealth building has not changed. And so today, let's dive into what true wealth is really about, what money mastery formula is, and if you've ever wondered if this game is rigged, like the game of money, is it rigged? The answer is yes. Absolutely, it's rigged in favor of those who are educated, in favor of those who understand the rules. And so, if you have not spent any time or effort learning how to win this game, then no wonder you haven't won. And it's not your fault because you were not taught in school, and you were never taught by our parents, by your parents, and we were never taught how to become wealthy, or even that it's worth it to become wealthy and that we deserve to be wealthy. But let's back up to the first point, and that is, do we actually want to become wealthy? Because maybe that's not your goal. And if it isn't, no problem. There's nothing wrong with just wanting to have a comfortable life where wealth is not your primary motivation. You don't want to be driven into this world of money, 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 the rat race, and all that. And I have a lot of respect for people like that. In fact, I truly feel that those who can actually skip the whole money chasing, wealth building dreams, they probably already have achieved that in some previous lives. I truly believe that because in this lifetime, they're here to learn something else. They're not here to learn how to make money anymore. And that is great news. However, for a lot of us, myself included, I was like deep diving. I was deep into the world of wealth building and learning how to create wealth and how to build wealth and how to do it fast. Fast, not as in a scheme, not as in a get rich quick scheme and cheat other people, but fast as in how can I go all in. And there was a lot of lessons that I learned through my failures and my successes, and that's the reason why I created this course to help other people not having to go through all the pain, all the mistakes that I had made. So, if your goal is to have a comfortable life because you have a good job and you just want to stay consistent, focusing on other aspects of your life, then maybe this talk isn't for you. But if you are the type that knows that money is just a tool, it's just a means to an end to do what you actually want to do, whether to use that money for good, to help other people, or to build something that you want to leave behind as a legacy, then this talk is for you. And either way, there's nothing wrong. There's no right or wrong. It's just a matter of preference and what's important to you right now. In fact, for some of us, wealth building is not the right time for you right now because it could be that you should be focusing on your health or your family or something else right now and not wealth. So take this uh, as a buffet. So my show is a buffet. So whatever mood you're in for, whatever kind of food you want to taste or sample, then watch that. But this talk today and for the next 5 or 6 weeks, I'll be sharing everything about wealth building, money creation, money mastery, and also how to use AI to actually build wealth fast, and also how to take advantage And I would call it the unfair advantage of the AI opportunity if you actually happen to be in the midst of it. And if you're watching this show, then just know that you do already have the unfair advantage. Okay, so let me just share the foundation of money mastery formula. First of all, money mastery formula, it is a 5-step process. It starts with the foundation, which is a money mindset. And it is a money mindset upgrade, because if you've ever been stuck um, making a certain level of income, or believing that you cannot become wealthy, or believe that you don't deserve to be wealthy, all of that is about to change. Okay? Because if you keep thinking that, you will never become rich. It doesn't matter what you do, you will never become rich if that's what you think. And nobody is forcing you to think that. It's only you, because you were never taught to think differently. And so we'll address that very shortly. The second step is money management. And in this money management, we're actually going to learn to create a money system that actually works for you and also gives you freedom and wealth. And then the third step is tax minimization and asset protection. Every single wealthy person has to use this strategy, have to use this step, because if you don't use it, you're leaving money on the table and you are leaving money down the drain. You're flushing money down the toilet and also losing money for, it's like the bucket that's leaking money everywhere. And we're going to plug all of that leaks. And then step 4 is how to create multiple streams of income. Because if you only have one source of income right now, you are at a major risk. You are at a huge risk of losing that one source of income. So ideally, we want you to have 2, 3, 4, maybe even 5, depending on what kind of skills you currently have already. There's many ways that you can actually add more sources of income, just as simple as launching, whether it's maybe a book or a mini course or a coaching program or something on the side, just so that if your main source of income has any problems, you can immediately jump to the next type of income and build it up right away, instead of having to wait until you lose your first source of income and then jump into that. And then the step number 5 is leverage. And without leverage, you cannot build freedom and wealth. Without leverage, it's kind of like you're still riding the bicycle to work. And it's all good for health purposes, but in terms of speed, in terms of effectiveness, in terms of the feasibility of it, stop riding a bicycle when you can actually now use the cars, the airplanes, and the rockets to actually just fly there. So we're going to address all of these 5 steps. Okay, so first of all, let's go back to the foundation, which is your money mindset. So if you were born in a family that is not very rich in the first place, especially if you're an immigrant, especially if you were, well, first of all, we don't have a choice in terms of choosing who our parents are. We have no choice in that. And we have no choice in choosing where to live, because we were born in that country or born into that segment of the marketplace. Now, it is not our fault to be born poor. And if you hate that, then just know that it's not your fault if you were born poor. But if you die poor, then that's absolutely your fault. Because now, unless you die early or something where you have no time to build it up, but in terms of our own responsibility, our own accountability, it is not our fault to be born poor, because there's nothing we could do about it. But it is absolutely 100% our fault if we die poor. And that's because we have every choice, every decision that we make can totally change that situation. And so here's the bad news. The bad news is once you listen to this share, to this episode, and the following 5, 6 episodes, and you still don't do anything, and all you do is just listen, and we call it intellectual masturbation, we call it, just intellectual entertainment, then that's really sad. Because as I'm sharing all these things, there are specific things that you can do immediately to change your financial situation, to change your financial education, to change your money situation, your job, your business, your investments, your spending habits. All of these things, you can do immediate things to it to change it and make it very different in 3 years. In fact, when I was teaching this course back in 2020, I actually designed a 3-year freedom plan. If you actually follow that 3-year freedom plan, there's every chance that you can actually retire after 3 years. If you actually build that kind of business where you can actually retire. The only problem is it might not be a good fit for you, or you might not be willing to do what it takes, or it's just not something that's important to you right now. And that's all perfectly fine. There's no judgment here. There's no right or wrong whatsoever. It's just that what I'm saying is that if you truly want to build wealth and create freedom in your life, then this series of talks on money and AI is going to help you do just that. Okay, so let's dive into step 1, the money mindset. Have you ever told yourself that or if not told yourself, because usually these are the things that we kind of grew up hearing, because we never really came up with these things. But have you ever heard something like money doesn't grow on trees, or we can't afford that, or something along that line? Because I know I grew up with that. I grew up with a lot of, oh, we can't afford that. That's what I grew up with. Not only that, I also grew up with, you have to save. You have to save as much as possible. But all of these things that I was taught as I was growing up, it basically is the opposite of wealth building. And so when I read the book, which actually I wanted to, if you really want to build wealth, I highly recommend you to read the book Rich Dad Poor Dad, because it's going to give you a few mindset shifts that is super important. Now, am I a big fan of Robert Kiyosaki, who is the author of that? Initially, yes. When I first read that book, I was like, wow, what a genius. Like, I really loved his thinking on how he wrote that book. And it's still a great book. I highly recommend you to read it, Rich Dad Poor Dad. But then after a while, as I follow him, as I took his higher level trainings, I realized that he's not someone that I wanted to model after, because eventually I actually got to know more of who he is, what he's about, and it's all about the money. And that's not me. And so that's why I stopped following his guidance, because it's just not for me anymore. However, that book, Rich Dad Poor Dad, is still a great book that is the foundation of wealth building. Everyone who wants to retire wealthy and who wants to achieve freedom should definitely read that book. Okay, the second thing you need to understand, and please just understand that when it comes to wealth building, it's never about that one strategy, how to build wealth fast. It's never about, the get rich quick scheme or the lottery ticket. strategy or the hope and pray thing gamble where you put everything in one egg in one stock and hope that it blows up. It's never about that. Wealth building is always about consistency. It's never about gambling, taking a chance, or hoping that we're gonna strike it rich. It's never about that. And the reason why people lose money in scams, in any kinds of Ponzi schemes, is because they, number one, they haven't learned the rules of investing or the rules of money, and they haven't had enough experience in the real world of investing, where if something doesn't make sense, that's probably a Ponzi scheme. That's probably a scam that you shouldn't invest in. Because as you know, when it comes to wealth building, very few opportunities exist where you can invest in the Apple stock again, or you can invest in Amazon again, or you can invest in Bitcoin when it was like $100 per share, or you can invest in something like like these AI tools that are coming out, but at the beginning. The thing is, we cannot time those things. And in fact, even the biggest companies who spend millions and tens of millions on research, and they have hundreds of people on their team to do research on the types of stocks and the trends and all that. By the way, all those hundreds of people that they hire for that research purpose now is being replaced by AI, and AI is doing a much better job. So all those researchers now, they better use AI in their research because it's 100 times, 1,000 times faster with AI. So the jobs, if you are not advancing, if you're not using AI in your career, most likely you will be replaced by those who will be using AI in their jobs. Gosh, I think that's kind of like the broken record that I've been saying the past few days, but it is true. And I hope that you will not put your head down in the sand and pretend that you didn't hear that. Okay, so when it comes to the other mindset that is super important, it's that thinking wealth building is a long-term game. It's a consistency game, not a luck opportunity, not a gambling where you go all in. Kind of think of investing, think of wealth building like doing push-ups or doing like those heavy lifting machines. You don't want to do 8 hours of heavy lifting a day. That will kill you. That's not what wealth building is. Wealth building is investing every day, and that's why we call it dollar cost averaging. Uh, dollar what do you how do you say that? Dollar cost average investing. You invest a certain amount, for example, $5 a day, $10 a day, over every single day for, I don't know, 5 years, 10 years. But that's the strategy. It's consistency, not a one time investment. A one time investment, let's say if you put like 10,000 today into some kind of stock, that is a gamble. That is not investment. An investment is to put 10,000, if that is your budget, you would invest it every day, like $10 a day or $100 a day over a certain period of time. That is how you actually invest. That's how you take advantage of the dollar cost averaging, so that even if the market goes up and goes down, it doesn't matter because you're buying something consistently. Now, we're going to talk about what to invest in later because that's a different topic. However, just understand that when it comes to investing, it is a consistency game. It is not a one-time gambling game. Okay? And probably most of you have already heard the principle of compound interest. And there is a very specific exercise that you can actually do. If you were to double every day, and you start with only 0.0, or if you start every day, if you start on day one with 1 cent. So if I were to give you an option to choose whether you would choose 1 million today, okay, or I'm going to give you 1 cent starting today, but I'll double that every day for 30 days. 1 cent starting today, and I'll double that. I'll give you this 2 cents the second day, 4 cents the third day. I'll double that every single day for 30 days. Which option would you choose? I'm just curious. Okay, so choose, and then now I'm just gonna share with you very quickly because this would have been like in the program. But if you were to choosing to take the $1 million today, you would get 1 million. But if you had chosen to choose the 1 cent today and doubling for 30 days, you would actually get 5,368,000 and more. There's a few more at the end there, but it'll be 5 million plus. That's a huge difference. That's why we play the game of consistency when it comes to wealth building. And the game of consistency applies towards everything, not just in wealth building. It applies in our health, because again, if we were to do any kind of health regime, it's eating, it's exercising every day properly, not like a one time every month kind of thing, right? So understanding this now begs the question, okay, all right, consistency is the key, fine. But then how do I do it? What do I need to do? So then this leads us into the next step, which is money management. And in this step, money management is actually where we actually deep dive into the details of how you spend your money, understanding why you spend that money like that. Because most of us, we never look behind the how do you say that, between the line. We never look between the lines. We never look between the numbers to see why do we spend money like that. And most of us were born with certain habits, with certain brainwash, from our parents, from our neighborhood, from our friends and colleagues. And now the way we spend money, the way we invest money is basically just the things that we have kind of automatically picked up. Not that because we're aware of it or that we had a choice in it. So now we're going to have to go back to actually see why we do those things, and then now make a choice to either change that, keep what you want to keep, and then adopt new habits so that we can actually make it possible, make it inevitable that you actually achieve freedom within 3 years. And that's the plan. Okay, so when it comes to money management, rich people knows exactly where the money goes the minute it hits the bank account. Rich people already have a plan for their money because they actually know how much is going to go where. And then what's left over, do what with that amount. That's what rich people do. They already have a plan for the money. Poor people wonder where the money went. Okay, there's a saying, and I forgot how it is, but it's something like, rich people decide where the money goes. Poor people wonder where the money went. I think that's the quote. So when it comes to your own money, and it doesn't matter how much money you have, you could be making a lot of money, or you could be making just enough to cover your expenses, where you have nothing left after paying the bills. So we have two extremes, where you're making just enough to pay the bills, and you are making way more than needed, and you don't even care how much you spend because you can't spend it all. Okay, so these are the two extremes. For the rich, doesn't matter. The rich started, well, unless you were born rich. But most of the people that I've learned from, they were not born rich. They became rich because of their consistency of their wealth building habits. And that's what we're going to learn. So, first of all, it boils down to understanding the numbers of your own financial situation. I highly recommend that you don't spend anything using cash. Because if you use cash, you will forget what you spent it on. You know how you put $100 in your purse, in your wallet, and the next thing you know, it's gone, and you forgot what did we spend it on. You don't remember. So, and for the purpose of building points and also for tracking, I highly recommend that you spend everything using either your debit card or your credit card. Because on both of these statements, you will receive a monthly statement and you will know exactly where you spend that money and on what day. So, this is the first step to understanding your spending habits. So that once you understand where your money goes, without you really knowing where it goes, but now that you analyze your numbers, now you will understand where it went. And then now you will have a choice to make. Okay, here's the next step. You're going to decide you're going to create a money system, how much to spend on what. And then once you've decided on this, you're going to stick to it and change your spending habits to this new money system that you just created for yourself. By the way, in my actual course and coaching program, I have a tool, and now with AI, it's even better, where AI is just going to analyze your numbers and tell you exactly where you're wasting money on and where you can actually save money, and it's going to tell you exactly how to allocate all your money into what. So times have changed. So in terms of my tools and coaching, back in 2020, everything is still in a spreadsheet, Google spreadsheet or Excel spreadsheet. But nowadays with AI, you can just upload your bank statements, and it's going to spit out everything for you. It's so fast, it's so powerful, and there's no reason why anybody should not be taking advantage of these things to know exactly what's happening in your finance. The only thing that is stopping you is if, number one, you're not ready to change yet, and number two, you're afraid to find out the truth. We have the ostrich syndrome, the ostrich effect, where we want to put our heads down in the sand, because if we do that, we'll pretend that we cannot see. But the longer you do that, the longer you're just going to hurt yourself and those you love. So let's step up. Let's grow up and deal with it as an adult. And I'm going to be straightforward. And this is just not for you, but this is for me as well. Because trust me, I have my own share of ostrich effect. I have had my own shares of retail therapy. I've had my own share of, I'm just going to take a 30 days, do nothing, because I can't do anything right now. So I have had those moments. It's not like I can just will myself to do anything immediately. No, this is a process. This takes discipline. This takes decision. And sometimes it takes support from someone else to hold your hand and guide you along the way, because on your own, you won't be able to do this. Not because you can't, but it's hard to do it on your own. And because it's easy to do, but it's also easy not to do. All these things that I'm sharing with you, it's almost like it's no rocket science. It's not hard, but it's easy not to do. And that's the problem. Okay. So the money system that you need to create, and my system is simply 75, 10, 5, 5, 5. And we're going to define, and those are the percentage of your income, where it should go, and you're going to adjust it based on your current finance situation. So for most people, and I'm talking North American, for most people, 75% of their income is used to pay their living expenses, the cost of mortgage or rental, food, cars, insurance, health, whatever, like all the living costs. 75% goes there. And that is what I would call a healthy number. If you are making way more than that and your living expense is only 30%, 40%, 50% of your income, congratulations. Because that means you can build your wealth much quicker, and hopefully you can retire and be financially free within 3 years instead of waiting until you're 65, as the regular investing strategies provide for us. But again, you have to learn the game of money, and making money is totally a game. So that's why if you don't understand this game, you're going to lose. Just like anybody who plays a game and they don't understand the rules, of course they'll lose to those who understand the rules and play with the rules. And so that's why when it comes to money, when it comes to wealth, please learn the rules of the game. So 75, 10, 5, 5, 5, what are those? 75 is the living expenses. That's the first category. The 10% is on wealth building. And wealth building can be investing into some type of long-term strategy. And in terms of what to invest in, number one, I am not a financial advisor. However, I have learned enough to understand what's good, what's better, and what's best. And then the rest is just don't do it. Don't even go there. Don't waste your money. Don't waste your time. Because every investment that you make, if you've learned any kinds of wealth building, you know the cost of opportunity cost. Opportunity cost is actually when you spend a certain money on one thing and now you don't have that money anymore to invest in anything else. And that is called opportunity cost. So that's why when it comes to wealth building, we actually look at an opportunity cost a lot, not just with money, but also with your time and with your every assets that you have. Okay, so 10% reserved for wealth building. And wealth building could be building a business, and what I call a freedom business, because we don't want to build a business that makes you work from, there's a funny joke. I quit my 9 to 5 so I can work from 5 to 9. And 5 to 9 here is not like 4 hours, but it's actually 5 a.m. to 9 p.m. where I work way, way, way more than my 8 hours job. That's an ongoing joke for those who leave their job for building the business, right? I leave my 9 to 5 so I can build a business that makes me work from 5 a.m. to 9 p.m. That's a joke. But for those who actually are able to build a freedom business, then that would be different. And that's why the 3-year freedom plan is actually building a business for that purpose. Because not many of us is able to save that much money to be able to retire in 3 years. However, if you're going to build a business, a freedom business, then there's every chance that you can actually retire in 3 years as you set all the systems in place, all the people in place, so that that business will actually make money for you while you don't have to be working in it. Okay. So 10% is on wealth building strategy. And then 555, 5% has to be on wealth education. What that means is if you're gonna play the game of wealth building and you don't learn the game of wealth building, you're gonna fail for sure. 100% you're going to fail. Eventually, you're going to fail you're going to fail and you're going to lose it, because if you haven't learned the you either learn through someone else, through books, through coaching, or through some type of shows like this one, or you're going to learn by paying for your own mistakes. And that's what I did. Even though I had learned a whole lot from other people, but there were still things that I could not have learned fast enough. And the market crashed and I lost everything. And that is a huge learning curve for me. And I paid for that with my own money, with my own blood and sweat. And I hope that you're going to shortcut all the pain, all the losses by actually spending 5% of your income on learning how to build wealth, learning through other people's experiences, through books, through coaching programs, or through free things like YouTube channels like this one. And there's a ton of good ones out there as well. Okay, the second 5% is for fun. Fun. And here is where you're going to spend 5% of your income on anything you want. And you want to do it guilt-free. Guilt-free, as in you have reserved this money, this 5%, for anything. Okay, so if you are married, by the way, this is super important. If in a marriage, the number one reason for divorce is usually financial hardships. Especially if one person makes more than the other person, or if one person is more of a saver and the other person is more of a spender, then there's a lot of friction. There's a lot of difference in mindset, and that could cause a lot of hardships in a marriage. But if you are actually married, and to save yourself a lot of agony and arguments, each of you, husband and wife, should deserve a 5% or a same amount of, we call it fun money, where you can spend it on anything you want. And the other person cannot judge you, cannot tell you to do something else otherwise, because that's none of their business. We have allotted this amount of money for fun, and both of you are freely to spend it guilt-free in any way you desire. Okay, so that would be a great tip for those of you who are in a relationship. And now back to the 5% fun, the fun allotment, the fun fund. Use this. Now, if you are truly wanting to build wealth faster, then I would recommend to use that 5% and put it into the investment fund, the wealth building fund, or put it into the education fund, because both of those buckets is going to help you build wealth faster. But you know what? If you are in the mood for retail therapy, or if you are in the mood for the latte factor, go for it, because you deserve it. That's what the 5% is for. That's what this money system is for. It's designed to let you have a system, to let you have discipline without feeling deprived. Okay? So that's why that 5% totally do whatever you want. It's just that for some of us, like me, I love reading, I love learning. So I actually just put that 5% into learning and building wealth and all that. So I never regret not having that latte factor, because I don't need it. I don't need retail therapy. I only need it once in a while. Okay, and the last 5%, this one is actually very important, even though you might think that, oh, I can't afford that right now. The last 5% is for donation, it's for charity. And it's actually to give to strangers who you've never met, or who you will never meet and never be thanked for, because they never knew that you even gave them this gift in the first place. And here's why. This charity bucket is going to help train you to give you abundance thinking. Even if you feel like, gosh, I should invest that 5% of charity into my wealth building. And yes, you can. You can totally do that. But maybe save 1% to give away, because that act of giving away is going to train you, is going to give you the abundance mindset that otherwise you wouldn't have. Have you ever met someone who they make good money? They save a ton of money because they don't know how to spend it, because they can't separate with their money, but they are incredibly, we call it stingy and rich, but they don't know, they cannot part with their money, and they're not even helping anyone else because they're afraid of losing their money. Like, it's kind of like and this is not just people who have thousands in their bank account. These are people who might have millions in their bank accounts, and still their mindset is still very poor. And not because, I mean, who are we to judge them, right? But the main thing is they probably grew up with a lot of scarcity mindset, scarcity thinking, where they're always afraid that they will lose their money. So therefore, they can't give away freely. They cannot have the ability to spend even on their own, for their own enjoyment. They work and work and work and save and save and save, and maybe passing it on to the next generation, the children and grandchildren. But they cannot spend it. They cannot give it away to strangers because they're so afraid of losing it all. And that kind of thinking is going to keep you stuck. Not only stuck, but also you will bump into situations where that scarcity mindset thinking is going to affect not just your finance situation, but everything else. Your relationship suffers. Your health suffers. And what's all the purpose of having that money for? Right? So that's why the purpose of the charity fund, the charity bucket, is so that you learn to give without expecting anything in return. You learn to give it to strangers where you expect nothing in return. Because now if you give it to friends and families, that's different. That is, you can use that in your fun account, in your fun bucket. But in the charity bucket, you want to give it to strangers who, with zero strings attached. And that is going to give you a complete mindset rewiring to give you abundance thinking. And that is actually very important. If you've never done that, and if you are not in a position to do that right now, maybe 1%. Instead of 5%, maybe 1% of your income goes to charity. 1%. Okay? And now, if everything else, if you are in a dire situation where every dollar is being used to pay your bills and your debts, then I would suggest 1% for giving, 1% for education, 1% for fun. I would like 5% on education and 5% on wealth building. So that would be like the 10%. Okay, so now you might ask, if I can barely pay my bills, how can I save 10% for the purpose of all these extra spending habits, creating the money system? And here's my honest, completely no bullshit answer for you. If you cannot save 10% right now by shaving off some expenses, you will never become rich. You will never become debt free if that is your thinking. If you're not willing to sacrifice 10% for the purpose of building your wealth, for the purpose of building your freedom, then stop trying, because you never will. That is some tough love. That is some, we call it no bullshit talk. And if you were to look at your numbers carefully, you will be able to save 10%. So here are where you can save it if in case you really wonder, how can I save? There's a statistic that says 50 to 7%, 70% of North Americans are living paycheck to paycheck. Okay, so the range is 50 to 70. We don't know how much, but we do know another stat that says 70% of North Americans have a subscription for Netflix. So just so you know, most Netflix subscriptions is $10 a month. So that's basically, that is the $10 a month that you can save. Now, the second thing, if you are currently not drinking coffee at home and you're actually buying a Starbucks at work at your coffee break, that's another $5 a day. I don't know. I think it's actually $7 a day, to be in fact. So that would be $5, or, I'll just keep it even for $5 a day. And you know what? That could be your lunch too. Now, instead of you going out for lunch, because actually, no, lunch is like $10 a day, or maybe even more. But the thing is, if you were to pack your lunch, you could actually save another $5 or $10 a day, correct? So let's assume saving money on lunch or Starbucks, let's say $10 a day. That's savings. That's $10 a day. 30 days is $300. That's a lot of money to put in the education fund, in the wealth building fund, in the charity fund, the having fun bucket. So another part that a lot of people spending money on is any kind of subscriptions. Okay, so if you were to go through your bank statements, debit or credit card, you're going to see some kind of monthly subscription. And you will find a bunch of stuff that you can cancel. That is the fastest way for you to save some money every month. Okay? And yeah, I totally get that sometimes things are tough. But the only way for you to get over that hump is for you to have very strict discipline on how to spend money when you have nothing left over. And because that is the beginning, that is the foundation, up until when you have a lot of money left over. Because if you are given a bunch of money to spend or to do anything with, but you don't know how to use it because you never learn how to do it, that money is going to be wasted just like that. It'll come and goes very quickly. So it starts, there's that saying, how does it go? If you can't manage a little bit of money, then who's to say that you can manage a lot of money? Don't kid yourself. When you have nothing left over, this is the best time to learn this money system. Okay? So, so that is step 2. Wow. Holy cow. It's already 50 minutes. By the way, in my actual coaching program, each of these steps is 1 hour. So I'm kind of going faster and skip through all I'm trying to go as fast as I could. All right. So then step 3 is tax minimization and asset protection. Oh my gosh. This is where what we call ignorance is not bliss. Okay. Because there's a saying, ignorance is bliss. But when it comes to this, step three, tax minimization and asset protection, ignorance is expensive. Ignorance is totally expensive. All the rich people, they know this rule extremely well. Not only they know it well, they actually hire the top of the top experts to do it for them. So yes, they understand the rules of the game. So therefore they hire experts to do it, to execute it for them. But this takes education. So first of all, if you don't understand the rules of the game, you're going to lose to three types of people. The first type is the government. If you don't understand the games of the tax game, you're going to lose extra money to the government only because you have not taken advantage of all the, we call it the unfair advantage of those who understand the games. And it boils down to one thing, and that is either you're an employee, you're paying the most tax, or you are a business owner, an entrepreneur, and you're paying the least tax. The same person, for example, the same person who has a job makes $100,000, just to keep it simple. A job, a T4, a T slip, okay? $100,000 a year income versus a person who makes who also collects $100,000 net in terms of after paying for the expenses of the cost of goods or employees and all the other things that they have to pay for. Now they also have $100,000 to spend on their living expense, the five buckets that we mentioned earlier, the 75, 10, 5, 5, 5, right? So this person who is an entrepreneur, who is a business owner, is going to pay 30% less tax than this person who is an employee. Why? Because that's how the game is. That is the game of the tax game. And if you don't understand this tax game, you're going to lose 30%. That's it. Whereas, so both people make the same amount of money, work the same amount of hours. Let's just compare it just so that we can compare apple to apple. But in the end, this person who has a business is going to keep 30% more money because of this person, because this person pays way more tax than this person. So, and I won't go into the details because it's just tax rules, tax strategies. Speak to your accountant or a tax strategist, or I'll open up my coaching program at some point so that you can actually have access to all the questions that you might have, because these are the questions. And you know what? Use ChatGPT if you don't want to pay for anyone for anything. Use ChatGPT. Just make sure that you also double check that across all the other tools like Gemini or Claude, just to make sure that ChatGPT doesn't give you the wrong answer, because it does. Okay, but the bottom line is this: understand the rule of the game so that you pay less tax legally, not like not like illegally. Okay. And the reason for that is because governments reward people who create jobs, and entrepreneurs and business owners creates jobs. That's good for the economy. So that's why they reward all these people with a bunch of tax incentives for cars, for everything. There's a whole list of them. Okay, so now the next person or category, if you don't understand the game, you're going to lose money. And that is the banks. The banks, yes. Now, how do you lose money to the banks? In every day possible. Number one, imagine if you, every dollar that you put into your bank account as a savings, okay, how much money are you making? Oh, maybe 0.5%, maybe 1%. If you're lucky and you put it into some kind of fixed term, you can probably, or GIC, you can probably get maybe 2%, maybe maximum 2.5%. That is what you're paid for putting your money in the bank. Here's the thing, here's the reverse. If you had to borrow money from your bank, how much money do you pay percentage wise? If it's a credit card, you're looking at 12% minimum, 18%, some is 22%. And that's what the bank charges if you don't pay. That's the interest rate. Now, if you actually borrow some type of borrowing that requires a collateral like a house, like a HELOC, then you're looking at what? Prime plus 1% or something like that. A mortgage is like 5% prime plus 1, much cheaper. But still, that's a lot higher than the 1 to the 2% that they're paying you if you put money in your savings account. Furthermore, here's the thing. For every dollar that the bank has that you actually put into the savings account. So for example, let's say you put in your savings account 10,000 and that's in your savings account. The bank is allowed legally to lend out 10 times that amount, 100,000, based on your 10,000. Why? Because that's the rule of the game. They're not required to have 100% of the money in their bank account physically to count down. That's why when you have a problem, such as when we had any kind of economic crisis and people want to go to the bank and pull the money out, most of the time, if everybody's rushing in the bank and pulling money out, you will know very shortly that the bank is out of money. You have to come back another time, or you can only withdraw a certain amount every day. Why? Because they have no money in the bank account. They already lent it all out. And they're allowed to lend up to 10 times what you actually put in. That's the rule. That is the rule of banking. Now, another rule, and this rule is really important if you're planning to invest in the stock market or any kinds of mutual funds. And this rule sucks, but if you don't know the rules, it's your loss. Okay? So whatever amount that they say on their rate of return, the average rate of return, that's what they call it. So for example, if you invest in a big bank, your 401k or your RSP in Canada, or any type of investments, okay, typically they would give you the trend, the last 10 years performance. Average rate of return is 8%, 10%, 12%, whatever it is. But that percentage is totally, it's not fake, but it is manipulated. It's not the truth. And here's why. Let's give an example, okay? Real numbers. Let's say 2020, COVID hits and everything crashed. And it did, okay? So let's say you had $100 in your mutual funds, whatever account savings you had. You had $100 in. And then 2020 hits, it crashed, and now you lost 50%. Actually, most people lost that amount. Most people lost 50% or more. So now in your bank, you only have, or not your bank, but in your investment account, you only have $50 left. You lost 50%. Okay? Now, next year, the bank made money. Wow, it grew back. Okay, so 50%, it grew back. Let's say it grew back 100%. And now you have $100 again because you were left with $50. And now year 2, you're back to 100%. And here's the thing. you're back to zero gain, right? You had 100%, you had $100 before. Year one, you're down to $50. Year two, now you're back to $100. So you're still at zero gain. But in their reporting, they're going to say that year one, minus 50%, they lost. But year two, they went up 100%. So plus 100%, minus 50%, the average of that is now plus 25%. So on their reporting, they can legally say that their portfolio rate of return is 25% on average the last 2 years. But in reality, your money did not grow 25%. Your money is at par. It was 100